Okay, welcome back, everyone. We are collecting the students for the clinic student panel. And I think it looks like to me in the upper thread that we have quite a few on. So I think we will be getting started here in just a minute. And Jennifer, are you feeling ready to go?
Yes, we're all good.
Okay, let me see how I can send it over to you, Jennifer. Go ahead and start talking and hopefully your video. There you are.
Okay,
Thank you.
sure. I'm Jennifer Morrell. I'm the director of the Veterans Law Clinic at Delaware Law School, which is part of Widener University. And we've got a panel here today to discuss insights, lessons learned, fears when they started, just any tips and advice that they can pass along about their experiences that they had when they were interning, or some of them are currently interning. So you're probably going to get a wide variety of information. So to start, I thought we would just go through each panelist, but actually before I do that, I didn't know if Professor Clausen's students wanted to join the panel. I think it's Jacqueline, and then the second student, I'm trying to see if her name is here. Maybe she's not here anymore, but Jacqueline, if you wanted to jump in and answer these questions as well, feel free. The more voices, I think, the better. So to start, I'm going to have each intern panelist give us your name, which clinic you were with, and how long did you intern there and when, because some of you may have been a few years ago. And then what you're doing now if you've graduated from law school already. So I'll start, I've got a list of your names, so I'll start and just go down the list so that you're not all talking over each other. So again, it's just your name, which clinic you were with, when you were there, and how long you were there, and then what you're doing now if you've graduated from law school. So I'm gonna go right down my list here. We'll start with Dejana Bates. If you can, there you are. Okay, great.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dejana Bates. I was part of the Veteran Law Clinic in Delaware, Widener University. When was it? It's been a couple years. 2018, maybe? We'll go with 2018. I was there for a semester. I am currently graduated. I am an MLK fellow and staff attorney with Community Justice Project, part of the Pennsylvania Legal Aid Network.
Okay, great. All right, and then thank you to Jenna. And next we'll go with Rachel Bozeman.
Hi, I'm Rachel Bozeman. I was part of the Veterans Law Clinic at Widener summer of 2018. So I did it right after my 1L year. I recently graduated this past May, and I am currently studying in perpetuity for a bar exam that may or may not ever happen. So that's, super fun. And I'm in process for a couple of job opportunities.
Okay, great. Awesome. Thank you, Rachel. All right, we'll go with Gabe Griffith next.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gabe Griffith. I was also at the Widener Veterans Law Clinic. I did an internship there first through Equal Justice Works in 2015, and then I did the clinic spring 2017 semester, and currently I'm a public defender at Lancaster County, Pennsylvania's office.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. All right, Marina.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marina Rinaldi. I am a current third-year law student at Widener University, Delaware Law School, and I am currently an intern at the Veterans Law Clinic. I started last semester, and I'm now in my second semester as an intern.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then I don't think Justin's here, but speak up if you're here and I just somehow don't see you in the gallery view. Justin is not here. Okay, all right. How about Dan?
Hi, I'm Dan Nishiguchi. I interned at the University of Detroit Mercy Law's Veterans Clinic. I did 2 stints last summer semester and last fall semester at the clinic, and I'm just about to start 3L next week.
Okay, great. All right, next will be Brenna.
Hi, I'm Brennan Cameron. I'm from the University of Florida Law Clinic with Professor Clausen. I am going to be a 2L this year. I guess I am a 2L. Classes started this week. And I worked just this past summer, the whole summer with the clinic.
Okay, thank you. And then last is Amber.
Hi, my name is Amber Little. I'm a rising 3L or a 3L now. And I had the privilege of working with the University of Florida's clinic along with Brennan, Professor Clausen. I worked there for 6 months. I did the spring semester, this past spring semester, and this summer as well. So I was really lucky and was able to write a full brief and a reply brief while my time at the clinic. So really enjoyed it.
Okay, all right, thank you all for that introduction. All right, so the first question I'm going to ask is for each of you to go through and talk about the types of cases that you worked on, because I know different veterans clinics handle different types of cases. Some are very narrow, some have a wider scope and handle all sorts of things, not just veterans benefits. So I guess what we'll do, and even within our own clinic at Delaware Law School, some students handle a wider variety of cases than others. So we'll just go through again. We'll start again with Dejana.
So I think I'm one of the students who got to do a little bit of everything. I know I wrote at least a couple of wills, went through the process of going through with the client, having them sign the wills, veteran disability benefits, and I feel like I'm missing something else. I know I helped some of the other students with their caseload and their research as well. So mainly disability benefits, and a bit of wills.
Okay, great. And how about you, Rachel?
So I actually had the opportunity to work on a case for the CAVC. We had a client that we coordinated with the consortium with, and I had the opportunity to review all of the record in about 5 days. And
Rachel, how long was the record? Do you remember?
8,172 pages. So that was intense. But it was very interesting. And as you know, as was mentioned earlier, one of the things about that is when you have such a time constraint and such a large record, it can seem overwhelming. And it's kind of, how are you going to do this? How am I going to figure it out? You organize, you take the time, you break it down, you read it as a story, and then you get to figure out what is the major need, and then what are the pieces that are missing. So I actually inventoried everything depending on which hospital it was from. Was it a physician claim? Was it from the BVA? And then I went in chronological order, and I used Excel to create a chart and break everything into chapters so it was easy to reference. So that was a really cool experience. We ended up setting precedent from the Rule 33 memo that I had drafted with, I know several other students had worked on it as well. And it ended up going in front of the CAVC, oral arguments were heard, and we set new precedent for our client, and he finally got the benefits he was long overdue for.
Yay. All right, awesome, thank you. And how about you, Gabe?
Yeah, I guess I did a little bit of everything, service connection claims. I know I did a reply brief with the CAVC at one point. After my first year of law school, I got an opportunity to do a DRO hearing as well, which was fun.
Okay, awesome. And then let's see, Marina?
Hi, so my semester was mid-pandemic, so it was a little hectic finding the new norm, but for the most part, I helped clients with filing an initial claim and composing evidence and their facts and things that would help strengthen their case. So a lot of it was like medical inventory and figuring out their service history, how they may be service connected, and things of that nature. And as well as doing some admin work that was very important with organizing the client files and making sure we had the correct information when filing the claim.
Okay, great. All right, and Dan, how about you? What kind of cases did you work on?
Largely service connection cases. I did have one Rule 33 conference with the CAVC in the fall. And then my biggest case that I kind of spent my 2 semesters on and was one of the reasons why I went back was my discharge review case with the Naval Discharge Review Board. And that was an interesting one. It was a lengthier memo with tons of exhibits, but it was probably my favorite case that I had the opportunity to work on.
And Dan, are you still waiting for a decision on that?
I would assume so. I haven't heard back anything from Professor Costello, and they tend to move slow. I submitted the memo, I want to say in December, and
Okay.
I believe Professor Costello was estimating another 6 months, give or take, to get back the hearing date for when our client goes before the Discharge Review Board.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, Brenna?
I have also had the pleasure to work on a lot of different things. I saw the Rule 33 settlement conference memo. Sorry, I got to help work on a reply brief. I authored an EJA brief on my own and then also helped with a few others. Got to work on a discharge upgrade for someone who's discharged under a don't ask, don't tell like policy, which I thought was really interesting and fun personally. I got to see a little bit of when we took the remand. That was cool, and also disability benefits, service connection cases.
Okay, great. And Amber?
I mainly did disability benefits and service connection. I worked on a full brief and as well as the subsequent reply brief. Just because I was there for 6 months, so I got to kind of see it all the way through. And I did also start a discharge upgrade. Unfortunately, I couldn't see that case all the way through, but those were mainly the things I did over the spring semester and this past summer.
Okay, thank you. All right, so then next I want to just talk about, some of the interns who are coming into these clinics this year may have no legal experience whatsoever prior to starting at the clinic. They may be first generation law students. I was myself. So I'm curious to know if any of the interns on the panel had no previous legal experience before starting at a veterans clinic. Yeah, so go ahead and actually, Dejana, do you want to start? I see your hand up. Like how did you feel starting out? And do you have any thoughts you want to share about that?
I was a little panicked. I will admit that. But I think with the classes that we did, taking the time to really learn as much as I could about the law, I think made me more comfortable being able to advocate for my clients. And also the safety net that the clinic provides, and if I don't know what I'm doing, I'm going to run it by my supervising attorney first, having that opportunity to say, this is what I'm thinking. Am I right? Is this what my next steps are? Just that safety net of being able to make the right decision, but then double checking.
Okay, great. All right, and then I think Jackie had her hand up next, and then we'll go to Brennan. So Jackie?
Yes, ma'am. I didn't have any experience before. I had a lot of work experience, but nothing legal. And I came in at the beginning of the clinic, so it was very interesting. We were just taking anything that had a veteran somehow involved, which throws you into like ridiculous things. Like we had a landlord tenant case that literally took me a year to get rid of because we just didn't want to do it anymore. But so I had no experience, and it all came down to me just getting really, really close with Professor Clausen, and we talk all the time for like hours about everything. And I got to be involved in almost every case that comes through our door. I have something related to, which I love. But yeah, it's just working super closely with her and then reaching out to Stetson or whoever it may be if we have some like novel question that we just need answered really quickly.
Okay, great. All right, and then how about you, Brenna? You also came in with no prior legal experience?
Yeah, I just finished, 1L, and there's no one in my family who's a lawyer. It was fun, but to like lift a quote from Professor Clausen, it was like drinking from the water hose, from the fire hose. It was just, for me, I was like overwhelmed with so much information all at once, and I wanted to try to like read everything and watch everything, but some of these terms, like I was really easily confused between some of the nuances. But obviously, like Amber was in the clinic before me, and I remember talking to her a lot, and obviously Professor Clausen. And I just really thought that like samples were healthy, sample briefs, and finding the exact part of the Veterans Benefits Manual that deals with the like specific thing that you're trying to do versus like initially I was trying to just read like giant chunks. of the manual, and I did not find that as helpful as I wanted it to be. But just to break it down into the smaller, easy pieces, and then of course rely on all the support systems that you have around you. And I have found that it was really fun. Hit the ground running, and but kind of great in that respect as well.
Awesome, thank you. All right, next I'm just gonna have you, I can see all of you, so just kind of raise your hand and I'll call on you. What do you wish you knew at the outset of your internship? Is there anything, you know, when you finished or when you got through one semester, one summer, is there something that you wish that you had known at the outset? Some wisdom, some specific knowledge or information? Or is that just a bad question? And we've got some answers. Gabe?
Yeah, I guess the one thing, because I first did it after my 1L year, I think the one thing that I wish I maybe had a little bit more knowledge on was just administrative law in general, because at least at Widener, we didn't take that course till our 2L year, and having no idea what an enabling statute is, anything of that nature, and seeing how, you know, how Congress would pass something that's then codified in the CFR. I didn't really understand any of that going in. So I think maybe if I were to do it again, to maybe get a little general crash course on just how administrative law itself works, I think that might have helped a little more.
Okay, good point. Anybody else have anything specific that you wish you had known at the outset that would have made your job easier, your time easier? Anything that comes to mind? Dejana?
I just want to say it's something that I knew logically, but practically, it's something I wish I'd have thought a bit more about, is just keeping in mind what these veterans have been through and the idea that they've been through so much. So if they're talking to you crazy, you know, giving them that grace and remembering what they've been through and the level of frustration that they've been through before they get to you. Because by the time they've got to you, they've probably been through so much. So I've had some veterans that I've been concerned about, whether they were yelling at me or whether we were concerned that they may need to be committed. But it's just keeping in mind everything that they've been through and keeping that in mind in how you're talking to them when you're trying to get information from them, trying different ways to get them to remember, because a lot of them have been through such hard things that their memory is shot.
No, that's good input. Jackie, you had another comment?
I think what Dejana just said is like gold, especially when you're doing discharge upgrades and you're trying to collect evidence from these people. And like a lot of them are homeless or in weird situations. So like just getting them to sit down and write one lay statement for you honestly has taken us months sometimes, which is why one of our cases was literally the longest case we ever had. And I think we just finished it because we just couldn't get him to sit down and write something. And it's so easy to get frustrated. And like, I'm the first person to call Professor Clausen and complain about people not doing what they need to do. But what Dejana said, just like remembering like what they're going through and how they've probably just been super disenchanted with the system. And like, we're there to help them, even though like, it's not always the most awesome experience, I think is super important.
Okay, yeah, that's really good input. Anybody else, anything to add? Or to can you jump off of what, Rachel?
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to build off of that and say, you know, so I didn't have legal experience, but I've had about 10 years working experience with clients. And there's a couple things that are transferable across all industries. And it's what everybody has said. Communication is key. At the end of the day, everybody wants to be heard, right? And especially for some of these veterans who've largely felt like they're just a piece of bureaucratic paper. They're not. They've felt this way for years and years and years, and they're coming to you, and it's hard for them. Even if they can remember, that can be difficult. That can be triggering. But giving the opportunity to be heard. Now, obviously, you have to time manage because sometimes you being their point of contact, they can kind of call you every day and things like that. So you have to find a balance, but always remember that there are real people. These are real veterans and real cases. I mean, I know my client, he suffered tremendous debilitating lifelong injuries. And he had been passed around and up and down and, you know, decisions back and forth. And one of the first things I did was I picked up the phone. It's a thing that people still do. We pick up the phone, we don't text, and we have a conversation with them and let them know, like, hey, I'm here. You know, that was the first thing I told them is, I'm here, I'm your point of contact. You call me, we're gonna get through this together. And the more that I can talk to you, the more I can help you, because information is key, it's everything. But they're not gonna give it to you if you don't build that rapport. And you can't build a rapport in an email, and you can't send them more paperwork. You've got to do the old traditional things and have a conversation with them.
Yeah, Rachel, that's great information. I think I do find that a lot of my students express anxiety about being on the phone with clients, also in person, which we're not doing right now, but even just picking up the phone is nerve-wracking for a lot of students, especially if they haven't had work experience. So that is just, you know, I have students and I think, well, why haven't they called the veteran yet? And then I dig a little bit and I find out it's because they're putting it off because they're nervous. And especially in this day and age when everybody, you know, hardly anybody, right, calls anybody anymore. It's emails, it's text, as you pointed out. So it's almost a skill that has to be learned. And part of it is just doing it and getting over that anxiety. And you learn that it's doable, and you know, it's just a learning process in and of itself. So really good feedback. And then Dan, I think you wanted to add something.
Yeah, just piggybacking on all of that. I think the main thing is like being compassionate and patient with the veterans. To ourselves, especially as law students, we kind of undermine ourselves and look at ourselves as lesser than an attorney. But to more often than not, to most of these veterans, we're the experts to them. We're probably, you know, one of the last persons in the supply chain that's going to be there to serve them and assist them. So just trust your instincts and your ability, your supervising counsel and their direction. Be patient and compassionate with the veterans, but also to the same extent, be firm on when you need something, and letting them know that, you know, the only way we advance their matter or their issue is to get what we need to do the best job possible for them. And from my experience, I will say 9 times out of 10, every veteran's been super grateful and gracious with the service that we've done for them, because they really view us as essential to, you know, getting them to what they're hoping to accomplish.
Okay, great. All right. All right. So the next question, I mean, some of you have sort of touched on this, but do you have any specific experiences you want to discuss with speaking with veterans, meeting with veterans, or speaking with your veteran clients? Any specific experiences that you're willing to share? It can be inspiring. I know I will say this, a lot of my students, I feel like, and I think another student maybe touched on this concept, but a lot of my students will be working on cases just, you know, on their computer, on paper, or whatever, and once they talk to the veteran or actually meet with the veteran, they come to me and tell me how suddenly invested they feel in the case, or they just have more motivation at that point, because it's not just paper. At that point, it's a real live human. Maybe it was Jackie who had mentioned that earlier, but that's a real phenomenon. I mean, it even works. I mean, I've experienced that with that when I get a new case and it's just paper at first. When you finally meet the veteran, and it's not always a veteran, sometimes it's a family member who's the claimant. It sort of changes things and gives you more of that oomph and that push to do what you need to do. But to go back, because I'm kind of babbling here, the question is, you know, any experiences with speaking with the clients that you're willing to discuss or share, or tips or anything like that? Amber?
You kind of talked about it before, about how like students sometimes will hold off on calling the veteran when they need to because they just don't know how to approach talking to someone on the phone. And I'm normally that friend where people kind of just hand me the phone, like, here, you talk on the phone, because I don't really have that anxiety. If anything, I overtalk and I need to listen. So I felt pretty comfortable talking to the veteran, but since you are dealing with such sensitive issues, you know, you just kind of have to have that like air thought, like, okay, like how am I going to approach talking about this sensitive topic? And what I like to do is kind of write down like some ideas of how I want to say it, because I don't know where the veterans at with their mindset is at, how they feel, like, especially with discharge upgrades, those in themselves can be very sensitive because they feel a sense of shame about the discharge they did leave with. and, you know, they want to leave with a sense of honor. So just approaching that by itself is something I practice in the mirror. How did it come off? How did it sound? And then when I'm actually on the phone with them, I want to take that into consideration. Okay, what's this veteran's tone? Do they feel more comfortable talking about it? Do they feel less comfortable talking about it? And that's kind of how I went about it. I'm also type A, so you might like that idea, like of preparing different types of scenarios that could happen over the phone. So that's how I went about it.
Okay, great. Brenna?
Yeah, just to second the type A over preparing for something when you're nervous. My favorite thing, when I interviewed a client this summer, I really went through the record and I tried to basically know as much as I possibly could. And I started with like a skeleton draft of what I was going to submit to the court. And I made notes on exactly kind of what I wanted, like what points I wanted the veteran to talk to and talk about, so that I could incorporate that language into a lay statement and into the brief later on. And the interesting thing, I guess, for me, and this is just more tangential, is so I was working on a Don't Ask, Don't Tell case, like I mentioned earlier, and this person had been discharged back in the 1960s. And of course, here I am 24 years old. We grew up in very, very different cultures, especially as it relates to LGBT issues. And so there was just like a generational gap there that I was very cognizant of, and I tried to be very respectful of, but just the interpretation of like what it was to be LGBT back in the 60s versus now has obviously changed dramatically as, you know, the acceptance of it. And so I found that it was really interesting to kind of like re-go back and check a lot of those logics and how that thinking, especially when I was looking through some of the transcripts that had been through previously in the 70s, they were very, very cruel, I would say. And so his, you know, feelings towards being discharged for this reason had a lot more of that cultural impact than I am typically used to. So it was a really informative experience for me.
Oh, thank you, Brenna. No, that's very interesting. And I saw some other hands. Jackie?
Yeah, so one example we had last semester, so I grew up military and I'm very much from the family of like, you're fine, walk it off, take some ibuprofen, you know, you'll be, you know, rub some dirt in it, you're fine. And so we read one case and I was like, this dude has asthma and he's trying to get money for it. And I was so mad. And we jumped on the phone with him and he was like, no, so actually it's pneumonia. And it was like, okay, well, I now see your case completely differently, which was a good thing that we talked. But probably the most profound conversation I've ever had was a case that we had for a really long time. It was an Agent Orange case. This woman's husband died from glioblastoma. And I came in at the tail end just to kind of like wrap things up, do the EJA brief, whatever. And Professor Clausen had us get on the phone. And we did this phone call probably 3 weeks after my niece had died from glioblastoma. And so the two of us were just talking about it and like legitimately just crying on the phone, like, I'm here for you. I know what you're going through. And she was like, thank you so much. And it was just like a total sob story. It was not fun, but that client emailed us. I want to say Professor Clausen can correct me. I think she emailed the consortium and was just like, these people are amazing. I love them. And like, I don't know, like getting to cry with your client on the phone is a very unique experience, but then like it clearly just meant a lot to her because she could not sing the praises of our clinic enough.
Yeah, that just reminds me of just keeping an open mind as well, because I myself, when I've, you know, been handed cases that other attorneys in our clinic have had, or maybe a volunteer attorney gives us back a case, sometimes you might start out sort of skeptical, like you mentioned the asthma case. I know we had an asthma case where the veteran's asthma was actually quite debilitating and severe. I had a case when I first got it. I was looking to see what the issue was on appeal, and it was for GERD, which I can never remember what that stands for. Could anyone help me out here? Does everyone know what GERD is essentially?
Gastroesophageal reflux disease.
Thank you. And when I first saw it, I thought, GERD, oh, isn't that thing people take like a little pill for? They advertise all the time. Isn't that like a nothing sort of thing? And then I got into his, 2,000 pages of medical records. He's had surgeries. He now has, complications from the surgeries. he is severely debilitated, all from essentially what started out as just GERD, and now he's got secondary conditions. So it's always good in these cases to have a really open mind when you start looking at them. I mean, certainly, I don't know about, I can't speak for everybody else's clinic, but you know, we take on cases because we think they have merit. Occasionally, we wind up going down some roads and saying, oh, well, now that we're this far down the road, we see that maybe there's not so much merit. So sometimes that does happen, and maybe your instincts are correct when you're sort of judging a case, but just, you know, you want to try to have an open mind. But Rachel, I think, did you have your hand up? Or no?
No, I didn't, but I did not, but I mean, I can just kind of piggyback on all of everything what they've said. I mean, my big case was, of course, the CAVC. You know, when that record came down, everything stopped to get that done. But I did have other cases, and I had clients that were actually very difficult to understand. We had a dental issue, and it was outstanding dental bills. And the poor guy had his teeth pulled so many times, but you could not understand him. And he would leave voicemails, and we all knew it was him just because of how he spoke. But we were able to settle that, because even doing your due diligence, looking at their record, getting as much information you can, communicating with them in whatever capacity. I couldn't understand every word, but I certainly could understand when he said, I have to go and get another tooth pulled. And knowing he's already lost a lot of his teeth. This is painful. They didn't give him enough Novocaine, et cetera, everything else. And then again, picking up the phone, calling the BVA, asking them, why do you keep billing him when everything's been paid? Some stuff you can actually resolve very quickly also through that effective communication, which is that transferable skill. I mean, at the clinic and in practice and anywhere you go, I mean, that's how you work smarter and you work more effectively. You know, you don't need to look for the needle in the haystack yourself. You utilize all your resources, and the client is often the best one.
Okay, great. All right. I am going to switch to a different question unless somebody else has a burning comment they want to add. No? Okay. All right. So I'm not sure if any of the morning presenters spoke about what it's like trying to communicate with the VA. I had to step out a couple quick times in the morning, but I don't think anybody addressed it. So who would like to discuss your experiences with trying to communicate with human beings at the VA? Anyone? And it also can be discharge review boards and whatnot. So did anybody have any cases where, you know, your task at hand was try to get a human being at the VA on the phone or by email? I see some smiles. Anybody want to talk about what that's like? Dejana?
It was really difficult. One thing I will say about the particular group of interns I worked with, we all worked on very different schedules. So what will wind up happening is we would be paired, it'd be 2 of us per supervising attorney. So we would often work in these pairs. So my unofficial pair, he was a night student. So I'd be calling for some of his clients because I would just sit there on the phone. I didn't get an answer, I'm gonna call back. I'd call back. Or because he was a night student and this is the time he had on weekends, let me call. I'll call again and call again. And just feel like you're harassing them. It's fine, it's their job.
All right, thank you. Anybody else have success reaching people at the VA? I mean, it does happen. Marina?
Yeah, so I did have a positive experience with it. I was able to speak with someone on the phone regarding I needed confidential information about one of our incarcerated clients and obtaining information. And I felt that the phone call that I had, they were very pro-claimant and wanted to help you. I was just starting out. This was my first few weeks in the clinic, so I didn't quite understand or grasp how things worked. But the person who I spoke with on the phone, the representative, was able to give me the information I needed and then also follow up with resources to make sure that I would take that information and use it correctly, and even provided me with the appropriate forms that I needed through email. So I feel like the VA, although at times can be difficult because of how busy they are, it definitely is a great resource for any questions. that you may have, and to also relay information to the rest of the clinic, because I know that in my experience, I was able to get a form that maybe some others in the clinic weren't too familiar with. And so it was really helpful to speak with someone directly about an issue of that nature.
Okay, great. And anybody else experiences communicating with the VA? Like, you know, even if it's just getting a response to a letter, any stories or stories of not communicating well with the VA, not being able to get in touch? No? All right. All right, next, here's a question. Did you all work in teams of students at your clinic or solo generally? Go ahead and just raise your hand if you want to. Amber?
So during the spring semester, it was very team oriented. Like our professor, Professor Clausen, assigned us, usually it was like 3 to 4 people, and we were assigned branches of the military. So I was Army, and we kind of was able to just divide and conquer in that way. So we all pretty much had one individual assignment that we worked on, but then she would try to give us one big project. So for my team, it was a brief, and she kind of talked about how usually you would separate how drafting the brief into like everyone would get an argument and you would focus on that argument. And it worked out really well because you can turn that section into a writing sample for prospective employers. So I feel like that was a really good way to tackle the clinic and the work to make it manageable, because we were all taking different classes on top of the clinic too. So I think working in a team is a really good idea. For the summer, since we were remote, we did work as a team, but it was a little more individualized, I would say, just because we were remote and we were all on different schedules. I know personally I took summer classes, so it was just more individual and less team, but technically we did work together, and arguments for briefs were divided, but it was definitely more team oriented for the spring semester.
Okay, great. Thanks, Amber. Anybody else? Dan?
For my experience, we were given our own individual files at the clinic, usually 3 to 4 files per student. And there was always about, I want to say 6 to 8 students in the clinic when I was there. And just because you're working on individual files doesn't mean you can employ teamwork when you are working at the clinic. Try to get a familiarity with your fellow classmates' files, because sometimes, more often than not, and this happened for me on several occasions, they might be working on something that might be useful for what you're doing, whether it be an older brief in the file or memo. And, you know, more often than not, your issues cross paths, and then you can kind of refer to what they have in their file to help guide your kind of work on your actual files that you've been assigned. So communication and teamwork, pretty critical to succeeding in the clinic.
Oh, Dan, that's great advice, Dan. I mean, that's we always tell our students at our clinic, you know, we try to do case rounds somewhat regularly. And now that we're remote, I'm hoping to utilize Teams and have some sort of communication, because that's exactly right. Nobody should have to reinvent the wheel. If somebody just wrote a memo or a brief on a particular topic, that can be used in, you know, another case potentially. So that's awesome advice. Anybody else? Team, solo, or anything? Jackie?
Like Amber said, we do the kind of group setup. I think it works really well for the clinic. We didn't necessarily do it at the beginning like this, but I think this is probably what we're going to continue with. But I have random cases that we still have, like we're doing an initial claim that we will probably never take again. But it's one of those things that it's gotten passed around so much that like I'm just going to see it through on my own, which is very different than working with groups, because I have people to like, you know, talk to and kind of sound out ideas, I guess, with, which I never realized I did so much during the semester and with my team until I didn't have a team to do that with. But when it comes to like collecting evidence, like right now I'm just working with experts, so it makes more sense for it to just be one person. In general, I think our group system works really, really well. I really like it. I think Professor Clausen's done a really good job with it.
Okay, great. Thank you. And we do have a question to go back to the prior talking point. Has anyone had success in effectively communicating with discharge review boards? And if so, which methods work the best? Anybody have particular advice on that particular question? Nobody? Dan?
I've had zero success, but I've left many voicemails.
Okay, so you tried phone. Were you able to try email or?
Yeah, I believe I tried email as well, and it was to no luck. So the discharge
Okay.
board is not very responsive, at least from my 6 or 7 months on that file.
Okay, so repeated voicemails that were not responded to. Okay, all right. So no good information on that, unfortunately, whoever asked that question. All right, what else did I want to ask you all? Let's see. I know you've mentioned some of the resources that helped you. Obviously, the Veterans Benefits Manual is almost, I think, everyone's go-to #1 resource. Are there any other resources that stick out in your mind that were particularly helpful during your internship? Brenna?
Say I used my appellate advocacy textbook actually a bit just to make sure my writing was like more succinct. So I think for those of us that are still in law school and still practicing legal writing, I really liked my textbook and I found it helpful.
Oh, that's good. No, that's good information. That's a good tip. Anybody else? Veterans Benefits Manual takes the win. Amber?
I went to sample briefs that were already filed, and that was another thing. Professor Clausen was just like, check out this case. We just filed it. You might want to model it similar to that. And that's kind of what I did. I like to look at things. I can read about it all day, but like I like to look at things. And also, when it comes to the VA, they do things differently. And she kind of already talked about this. We learn in legal writing and in your appellate advocacy class that you do case illustrations and spend so much time on that. Well, here you're going to do periodicals. And like we spent a brief time on that, but I really got to master it taking this clinic. And I got to see the benefits of it too, because like it's just very short and to the point, and it's more concise. And I think your argument is stronger because of it, because it's more concise and you're getting to the point. And I just found samples very helpful on how I need to attack that, and I was able to really master that.
Okay, great. Anybody else? No? All right. Let's see. Do any of you have any mistakes that you made that you're willing to share? Any valuable, like, because mistakes can be very valuable. You can learn a heck of a lot from a mistake. Anybody? We all make mistakes. I've definitely made some mistakes. Yep, Amber?
I will say, when I was first looking at the record, it was so many pages, and I just remember being kind of stressed out. So, but we had to know the facts. And I think that from just taking logs, school exams, just thinking like, okay, this is going to be, okay, we know what facts are. I know how to attack this. No, like I needed to really comb through that record. And I don't think I really had the skills to do that the first time around. But when I was drafting the reply brief and I was reading the appellee's brief and how like detailed, you could tell he really combed through, or the secretary really combed through the record. I had to go back and look and be like where did you see all this? Like it's all in 9 font, all very scribbly, but you really have to take your time to know the facts. And I feel like I enjoyed writing the reply brief even more because I had a better understanding of the facts when I was writing the reply brief. Like I understood the facts for the initial brief, but not to the extent when I was writing the reply brief. And I think that was a big mistake because I just feel like you don't know what it is to comb through a record, really, like a 2,000-page record from law school alone. That's just going to come with practice. You don't know if you're doing too much, doing too little, but like now I know, and I'm like, I wish I had just spent maybe a few more days on this record, just really like honing in on it, because I caught things that I didn't catch before. And I was able to be more creative too with my arguments because I had a better understanding of the facts. Like I was able to elaborate more. So I would say that was something I wish I had known back then and wish I had done differently. Like I wish I had combed through a little harder, just searching for more things that I can help my veteran win with. So
that's good advice. And I would just add, maybe the younger generations don't need this advice, but when I first started out and I was combing through records, I would take notes on legal pads, and I would be like on page 10 of paper notes, and then wonder where did I see that one fact? What document was that on what page? And I quickly learned, take these notes in a Word document or something that you can search, right? You can do Control F and find it in 2 seconds. Amber, you had a comment about that?
that's another thing. If you're doing it wrong. So we luckily have it on like an Adobe Reader, and I have like access where I can just leave comments on the side, and eventually I'll take those comments and I'll put what page they are on for the record, and I'll put it into a Word doc so I can Control F, because it just makes my life easier. And like she said, you should be quoting heavily from the record, so you'll just make your life easier if you have the quotes and you already know where you need to cite. So you could just Control F and be like, okay, I want to insert this quote here. Here's the the record citation, and here's the case I'm going to use to support it. Insert parenthetical. Be a machine.
Yeah, exactly. Anybody else want to share mistakes, Gabe?
Yeah, not necessarily a mistake, but just a piece of advice that kind of goes along with that question. Don't pretend like you know an answer to a question if you don't know the answer to the question. Okay, the worst thing you can do is try to BS yourself into an answer, and then later on, it becomes apparent that that wasn't correct. All right, and that also doubles back to communicating with clients, because at the end of the day, your credibility is in your communication. If you don't know the answer to something, you just say, hey, I'm not sure, but I can look into it for you and I can get back to you. Because the practice of law is not the memorization of law, it's being able to understand the law.
Excellent. That's excellent advice. Thank you. Anybody else? Dan?
Just playing off of communication. And one thing I struggled with a lot in my earlier times at the clinic was client interviewing. I often slowed down the progress on my files because I wouldn't get the full story from my clients. And largely that was at the fault of me, because I wasn't asking the right questions, largely open-ended ones, or at least asking the right follow-up questions to comments that might be made by a client. I'd often dismiss things that I didn't think were pertinent to the file, but had I had dug a little bit deeper and asked more questions, more often than not, you discover it might be important or something you need to know. One of my first interviews with Professor Costello, because she'd sit in on our early interviews, I think it was scheduled for 2 hours at the clinic, and I thought within 25 minutes, I thought I was done, because when you're doing your first client interviews, you end up getting your questions so funneled down and narrowed out that you don't really know what else to say, and you're kind of sitting there with a blank look on your face. And I remember Professor Costello saying, we're not done yet. And then she raised all the additional points that I missed and that I could have asked more questions about. And you end up building a bigger story, you gather more evidence, you're able to ask clients for more support for the things that they say, and you kind of make your life a lot easier when you're trying to advance their claims. So don't leave any stone unturned, even if it seems completely irrelevant, and try to get as much of the full picture as possible, because it'll serve their interests and help get them further along in the process.
Good advice. Very good advice. I'm trying to think what else. Or anybody else mistake? Dejana?
It's all my mistake, I would say, is off of the communication tip as well. I started off my talking by saying being compassionate for the clients. A couple of you may know, my dad is a veteran who has PTSD. It's a whole thing. So I watched it happen as a child. So I was big on this compassion, but then I'm on the phone for 3 hours and haven't actually gotten the point what I needed. We want to listen to them. We want to give them an opportunity to tell their story, and maybe even warning them at the outset, I'm going to be asking you questions, but I will interrupt you if I have to ask you more about something, because a veteran may say something that is just key, but they're going to glance over it because they may not realize that it's important. So you may, hey, wait, I'm sorry to interrupt. Can you say that again? Let me ask you about that. Like, you want to give them the opportunity to tell their story, but you still need the information that you need. So warning them in the beginning, hey, this is how it's going to go. I'm going to be asking you questions. I might interrupt you, but it's only so I tell your story. And also repeating the information to them, I think, is really key, because again, a lot of them have memory issues. So they may have said it one way, but that's not what they meant, or the way you wrote it isn't how it actually happened. Even if it's what they said, it may not be how it happened until they're confronted with that actual retelling of the story.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I know we only have, I think, about 4 minutes. So does anybody, I was going to ask you what's the worst part of your clinic experience, and then what is the best part, but we only have 4 minutes. So maybe I'll just first see if anybody has anything, really pressing that you want to mention, any inspirational advice you want to give the incoming interns. Rachel, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, yes, this is a great and tremendous opportunity to learn from practical experience, to gain transferable skills with communication, dealing with clients. Big point there that I think, I'm sorry, I can't remember your name who mentioned it, but knowing when you don't know, all of these things are super important. But of course, we're all you guys are all still in law school, right? And the big picture is, where is this going to take me? So I'm getting these skills and everything else. I had the tremendous opportunity. I received an award for the case that we set precedent for. I was honored by the Philadelphia Bar Association for the Eve Biskin Clothan Award. And as a result of that, I'm now in process of a tremendous job opportunity. And so these connections that you're making with your clients and with your colleagues and the work that you're doing, it's so important for the veterans, and it's so important for you to develop these skills, but you also don't know where it's going to take you. I mean, my background was in corporate finance. I never thought that I would make that connection from, management consultant to veteran legal intern to now an award recipient looking at an international investment company that I might be working for. So you never know. Just keep an open mind and be passionate about what you're doing, because you're going to learn a lot, and it's gonna make a difference in these people's lives.
Absolutely. And then Dejana?
I'm sorry, I just wanted to piggyback off of Rachel real quick. I will say, I don't think I would have, I believe this clinic inspired me to stay in legal aid, to stay in that kind of area. This is now what I do. I now deal with clients who yell at me all the time, but it works out in the end. But I will say, I don't think I would have gotten this job without being able to say I've managed my own caseload. I've done the work by myself or under the supervision of an attorney. I don't think I'd have the job that I have now without this experience.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. And Amber?
Piggyback off of what she was saying, the experience you get from this clinic is just truly amazing. I think one of my favorite things about this clinic is you get to be like an attorney. Like, I talk to my other friends at their clinics, and they listen to me talk about my clinic, and they're just like, wow. Like, I'm like, yes, this clinic is amazing. You get to be creative too, which, I mean, when you're taking a law school exam, there's only so much creativity you can really do on the exam. You're also extremely time crunched. But here you really get to talk about these arguments that you thought were dumb but are actually a really good idea. You get to really just fill out your attorney style for the first time, like what kind of attorney you're going to be. And I think that's amazing, because you get to figure that out now while you're in school instead of trying to fumble and do it postgraduate. So it's just an amazing opportunity to really know what it feels like to be an attorney, really advocate for someone, and it's a great cause.
That's a great point to end on, a great comment to end on. So, Hillary, I think our time is up. Is that right?
Oh, that's right. I wish I could just sit and listen to you all for another couple of hours, actually, because honestly, the wisdom in this group, holy buckets. I'm just so impressed by all of you. And thank you, Jennifer, for facilitating that excellent idea. So
yeah, you're welcome. Thank you all.